Just a quick review of tow charts. Okay, we finished our tow charts from meters to yards and bowling. I think I'm going to skip years to days. It's basically the same thing. Okay. If you want an exercise, again, it's not a ticket. I don't want to see it. Try doing the tow chart for the pay sheet. Okay. Maybe use my pay sheet IOP. The tow chart's already there, so you can compare your answers. But you're also going to be doing a tow chart for the gas estimate program. What did you all ask for? Tuesday for part 2? Yeah. Let's go with Tuesday. As Captain Picard would say, make it so. And so I will do that in a little while. That's the due date for part 2, a week from today. I will put it into Blackboard so that you can see it later. All right, so tow charts had tasks and objects and events. Under the tasks, we simply copied the tasks from the IOP processing column, added the clear the form and exit the form, or exit the program. Then under objects, for each task, we listed the objects that are involved somehow. For input, we named the appropriate object, text boxes, date pickers. That's about all we've had for inputs right now. For buttons that are involved, the button name is there, but like button clear, not only is button clear involved, but when we clear the form, the labels, the text boxes, the inputs and the outputs are all cleared as well. And finally, when we display the results, that it's caused by a button and it affects a label. Here's another example. Okay. None, none, none. Calculate. Clear, exit, calculate. Here it reminds you to list, I cheated in my notes, but here it reminds you to list all the inputs and all the outputs. One button clear. So there's another example you can look at. There's lots of these examples. We've done 3. There's another one in my notes. Should help you build yours for the gas estimate one. Please do not. Well, okay, you can. I'm going to ignore the tow chart in your submittal for next Friday. If it's there, I'm just going to ignore it because Friday's submittal is about IOPS and screen layouts. If your IOP or screen layouts have trouble, your tow chart's probably going to be in trouble anyways. So I will not be grading your tow charts until after I've graded your part 1. Now the fun starts. We've got a good plan, and as we determined, all of our Unit 4 programs are going to have these 3 event handlers that we have to write code for. For each one of those event handlers, we have to write now the detailed steps of how they're going to do their job for each one of them. Now we're in level 4. Now we need to know what are the equations, what are the details. But not C#. We're not going to that level. The way we do level 4 design is using one of 2 tools, and today we're going to use Pseudocode, and then we'll go back to flowcharting a little bit next week. Okay. Pseudocode is a generic, somewhat English programming language hybrid thing. Conceptually, anybody should be able to read your pseudocode and understand what's going on, but realistically, it doesn't always work out that way. You have to have some programming knowledge to get a handle on what's going on. We're going to use pseudocode. There's 2 tools here, flowcharts and pseudocode. Flowcharts is a diagram. I think there's an example here. My mouse will come back to me. Come on. There it is. Flowcharts are diagrams. They use these special symbols. I'm going to actually flip these around this year. Again, primarily because of our part 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to do pseudocode first. There are 2 tools that do exactly the same thing. They describe the details of how the event handlers are going to do their job. They both do exactly the same thing. Why am I showing you 2 tools? Because they're both valuable in certain circumstances and different programming shops use different tools. Most of them prefer pseudocode because it's a little easier to create. All it takes is a Word document. In our case, we're going to use an Excel spreadsheet to create pseudocode. Flowcharting takes a whole different program. That's Visio, and we're going to tackle that next week on Tuesday. So we start with pseudocode, but they both do the same thing. The good news is once you write the pseudocode for a event handler, creating the flowchart for it's almost brainless. You just got to figure out which shape box to use. If you do it in reverse, you create a flowchart for something. Creating the pseudocode is almost brainless. You just suck the text out of the boxes and make pseudocode out of it. As we get into decisions and loops, then they're a little different. But what they're really going to diagram for us and lay out for us is the logic. We are moving into Unit 4, which is sequential processing. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. No decisions. Not yet. That's Unit 5. Then repetition processing in Unit 6, so there's no loops. We're going to build. We're going to learn how to use the simple Legos first, sequential processing, and then work our way up from there. In Unit 3, we're designing for Unit 4, so all of your designs should simply be sequential steps. Here's what you got to do first, here's what you do next, here's what you do next. Done. No decisions. Remember Lightbot, or it wasn't, Lightbot let you make decisions. Lightbot let you do loops. Angry Bird let you make decisions and loops. Those are coming, but we're not there yet. It's just straight sequential processing. All right, so how do we do that? Let's go back to the not bowling meters to yards. I'm going to close my bowling design and save it. I'm going to come back to it. If you want to leave it open, I guess you could. And I'm going back to my meters to yards design. I now know from here that I have 1, 2, 3 event handlers that I need to create, that I need to provide the details for. If I go to the pseudocode, those 3 are so common, I've already set them up for you. If you need to add more, add more. I'd have to look at the assignment details to see if you need more than this, but I don't think there's too many more than this. If you get into the code and decide you need more, come back to this and add more. This is where we're going to put our pseudocode. Notice that I'm using indentation just like good programmers do. Here's my ButtonCalc. Put your code here, and somewhere down here there's an end. I highlight them to make them easy to see. Notice the code itself is indented to show that this all belongs to ButtonCalc. Here's all the stuff for button clear. Button exit. That's a tough one, right? Why doesn't it say this.close? Because that's not pseudocode. That's C#. Many of you in your worksheets have discovered Visual Basic, me.close. How you found that, I don't know. Must be using the Visual Basic book. You Googled it. How do I close a form in Visual Studio? You got me, that's Visual Basic. The pseudocode is supposed to be language independent. Remember, pseudocode is almost its own language. In some shops, they have rules for pseudocode. The most common mistake in pseudocode is you make it look too much like C. And a VB programmer wouldn't understand it, or a COBOL programmer wouldn't understand it. Your pseudocode, should be pretty generic. A verb followed by what we got to do. Close the form. Done. Now, how do we know what to put in here? Back to level 3 design. Going back to the toe chart. It occasionally comes in handy to see both at the same time, right? How do we do that? How many of you are using Excel? Anybody? Okay, if you're using Excel, this is slightly different, but very much the same. You're going to go to Window, and you're going to create a new window. What that means is create a new window that's the exact duplicate of this worksheet. So we're going to have 2 of them. And now I'm going to unmaximize. I'm going to restore these. If you're using Excel, under Window, there is a organize or something with your windows. What, layout, right? What's it called in Excel? Under Window, it's Arrange. That's what it is. Arrange your windows. I recommend horizontal. If For those of you who are using LibreOffice, we don't have an arrange. So here's my advice. Unmaximize, and then use the Command key, that's the Windows key, left arrow, and then do the same thing for the other one, but right arrow. And what those do is give you half the screen left and right. That was Command left, Command right for LibreOffice. Those of you using Excel, that probably works as well, but there's an easy way. You go to Window, Arrange, Horizontal. And now I can see two things at once. In this window, I can see my toe chart. I might have to scroll or maybe just shrink it down a little bit. And I can see my toe chart. And over here, I can see my pseudocode. So you can put them side by side. And this will also come in handy when we develop our test plans later. If we make that work, you do Window, New Window. And then you got to, in LibreOffice, manually arrange them. And if you use the Command arrow keys, you can get them side by each to use the local vernacular. And Excel, it's a little easier to do Window, Arrange. I think it's horizontal. Experiment. Let's think about it. I'm going to click the Calculate button. What do we got to do? First thing I've got to do is get my inputs. The inputs are going to be typed into text boxes. They're going to be typed into date pickers. It is conceivably possible in some programming languages to take what's in that text box and immediately start using it and do math with it. Visual Basic's real good at that. C#, not very good at it. We're going to be generic. Our first command is going to be to get the actually, that's not right. I have said our first job is to get the meters. Over here, I'm looking at the tasks, is to get the meters. So when I'm done, I should have meters. Remember, in all programming languages, the results of your equation, the recipient of your calculations, of your processing, is always on the left-hand side of the equal sign. Meters equals. Why did I call it meters? I don't know. Why did I call it meters over here? Because it's a good name. Don't change the name. Don't let LibreOffice or Excel automatically capitalize it for you. If it capitalizes, as soon as you see it, just hit undo and it'll uncapitalize it again. In Excel and probably in LibreOffice, I'm digging now, there are preferences or options. Let me see what I have here. Properties, no. Printer settings, tools, options. Save, I'm looking for spell check stuff. Print pass, font, security, appearance, advanced, anything in there? No. Load and save, language settings, LibreOffice. What I'm looking for is spell checking or auto caps, because it automatically capitalizes. There's probably a way to turn that off. I'm going to pause the recording here while I look. All right, we found it. It's under Tools, Autocorrect, not under Options. Tools, Autocorrect Options. And then somebody said under Options, and correct that, capitalize the first letter of every sentence. I would uncheck it. That will prevent Calc from automatically capitalizing the first thing that you type in a cell, which is kind of dumb in Excel anyways. Just turn that on, or excuse me, turn that off, click on OK, and it should stop doing that. All right, so in here I have meters equals. Equals what?
Yards?
No. What am I doing? I'm getting my inputs. Where are my inputs? Where? Where did the user put them? In the text box, txt meters. What this says is, remember, we're working from right to left, right? Take what's ever in text meters and put it in my variable called meters. In my class, thou shalt not do math with text boxes, labels, date pickers, numeric up, downs, nothing. You take the contents of the input, whatever it is, a text box, a date picker, a numeric up, down, you transfer it to a variable. There's all kinds of reasons for that. First of all, this text box, what's it got in it? What kind of data? Text. You can't do math with text. Even if it looks like a number, it's text. You can't do math with that. And so in C#, we're going to have to do more than this, but that's C#. We don't put that in here. No C# in our pseudocode. What this says is take whatever's in the text box, transfer it into meters. Okay. Now we have this meters. What do we want to do next? We want to calculate the feet. So I'm going to create a new variable called feet. How do I convert meters to feet? Well, this is where I go ask my buddy who told me, hey, I know how to do that. And he tells me that you take the meters and you multiply. That's a star, shift star. In all computer programming languages, in Excel, in Access, even in Microsoft Word, when you're multiplying, you use the Shift 8, or over on your numeric keypad, the asterisk. If you want to put an X in there, go ahead, but in your pseudocode, in programming, every language understands that. So to me, it's acceptable in pseudocode because it's consistent across all the languages. Times 3.281. How did I know that? I ask an expert. If you don't know the formula for something, I want you to think about it a little bit, but if you don't know the formula for something, ask me. It's not a math class. Many of you in your, well, not so much the math program, but in your gas estimate program are going to have the wrong formulas because you're just going to crank them out and say, that sounds right. Turn it in, I'm going to go, nope, that's not right. If you ask me, I'll give it to you. Kyle?
Wouldn't the decimal point be before the 3?
No, it's 3.281.
That's how many feet are in a meter.
How many feet in 1 meter? Yep.
That's saying meters is 3.281 meters equals what?
Isn't it?
3.28 meters. No, that's not what that says. That says 1 meter is equal to 3.28 feet. Because if I have 1 here times 3.28, I'm going to put that in here. 1 meter is equal to 3.28 feet. It's backwards, right? No, it's not. That's normal. You're not human anymore. You're a programmer or an IT specialist now. Everything works the other direction. When you build formulas in Excel, you only put that 1/2 in. Where does it go? Into the cell.
Why did they teach me the other way in school?
I don't know. I'm working on that. His question was, why'd they teach it to me the other way in school? I don't know. Because you were still human then. You're not anymore. Okay, but now we don't want feet. We want yards. So I'm going to press enter. Moves me down to the next line. Notice how these line up. Right? They're owned by ButtonCalc, but they're all at the same level. They're done sequentially. What do we got to do next? Calculate the yards. Yards is equal to what? Think about it for a second. You type it. Here's the common one. Is that what you have? Yep. Too bad. Divided by 3. If I have 10 feet, how many yards is that? 3 1/3, right? You got to divide by 3. In all programming languages, the // that's the one next to your shift key or the one above the 9 key, that's divide. Good luck finding the symbol that is aligned with the 2 little dots above it. You can find it, you can print it, but you don't use it for calculations. And we are doing calculations right now. This says, take the number of feet that you calculated up here, divide by 3, and put the answer in yards. Visualize it like that. It's not how you do it. Don't type that. But that's how you can visualize it. Take the results of this huge monster equation and put it in there. That's what that means. There will never be more than one item. This is another clue that can make the little hairs in the back of your neck stand up telling you something's wrong. There will never be more than one item on the left-hand side of the equal sign. You can't calculate one number and put it in 3 places at the same time. Can't do it. It takes 3 equations to do that. What else are we supposed to do under ButtonCalc? We're supposed to do this. We're supposed to do that. Oh, here's another one. We're supposed to display the yards. Where? What are we changing? What are we changing? On the screen, we're changing the label. To what? Whatever we calculated up here, lowercase yards. Here comes the logic, folks. Here comes the hard part. Okay? For those of you who aren't programmers yet, everything's backwards, so it won't last long. One thing on the left-hand side of the equal sign, when you create these equations, you always think about, what do I want to change? Meters. I want to take what's in the text box that the user typed, transfer it into here. Use that, multiply it by 3.281, and call that feet. Use that, divide by 3 to get, why did I go through this process? Isn't there an easier way to do that? Probably. But I'm following my design. Okay, isn't there a number like 1 point something that converts yards or meters to yards directly? Probably. That's not what my design said it was going to do. Are we done? Yeah. Because for ButtonCalc, I got the meters. All right. By the way, you have to get your inputs under ButtonCalc, but the text box does not do it. It's ButtonCalc that does it. Okay. Have to get all the we have to transfer the inputs. It's not really getting, we're transferring. Right? From the user input device, the object, into memory locations, variables, that we can then use in our equations. We're going to do another one for bowling, so you'll see another example. But if you have questions, spit them out. Okay, that one's done. I've done everything that I have for ButtonCalc, so ButtonCalc is done. It's very typical. Transfer all the inputs, do your calculations. This is the part you typically have to think about. And then take the results and stick them into labels, because that's where we always put our answers. Inputs, processing, output. Notice again the consistency from level 1 of our design, particularly for button calculate. Now we need to do button clear. What are we going to clear first? How about we work from the top to the bottom of the form? It doesn't matter. When you clear, it happens about that fast. All right, so if you clear from the bottom up or the top down or from the middle top and then down, doesn't matter. But save yourself some grief. Clear from the top down so that you're not thinking too much about how am I doing that. Top down of what? Screen layout. So I want to clear this text box. What's it called? TXT meters. Oops. Let's go back to this one. TXT meters. How do I know that? Because it's in my toe chart. I called it TXT meters right there. And when I cleared, I said TXT meters. How do I clear it? Multiple ways. We could say, gosh, the downside of having two screens, you got to remember. Clear it, don't follow. TXT meters. Actually, go ahead and follow. Type that. And you just do the same thing for all of your inputs until we get to the bowling program, then things change. And we want to clear our outputs. Now here's a second way that you can clear things. LBL yards equals, how do I clear out a label? It's a ticket question. Remember? Set it equal to what? Curly brackets, empty string. There it is. Good. What does it look like? Quotes. Two of them with nothing in between. Okay, this, I just pressed a space, is not an empty string. That's a space. That's a literal that has a space in it. That's different than this. That is also very common in almost all programming languages, and the only one that's not common in are long dead and no longer used, so we don't care, so you may use that. Both of these kind of work in C#. This one needs to be translated a little bit. That one's almost direct. That's my favorite, only because I've been using it for 30 years. These clear things just popped up the last 10 years or so. They both do exactly the same thing. In your designs, the official ones, which is part 2 when we get to it, pick one of these techniques and use it. Don't mix and match. The only exception, I'll give you one exception to that. If you want to clear all your inputs and set all your outputs to the empty string, I can tolerate that, but they both work for inputs and outputs. My advice, pick one. Go with it. Maybe in your gas estimate program you use clear, and then in your math program you use equals the empty string. This is called the empty string. In the book they talked about string literals. Literals are data, book definition, that are stuffed into your code, right? Literally written into your code. If it's text, like somebody's name or somebody's phone number or somebody's address, if it's text, it's called a string in all programming languages, and you put quotation marks or double quotation marks. The others are called apostrophes. Put quotation marks around your strings. This says take the empty string, which is a string with no characters, and whatever's in label yards, replace it with the empty string. Because remember, we're going this direction, right? Take basically nothing and put it into LBL yards. Clears the label. Button exits are done. Save it. Close both of them because we're done with meters to yards. That's the pseudocode. We write the exact steps for what's going to happen when we click on button calculate. What's going to happen when we click on button clear, and I gave you button exit. Let's do bowling. And once again, I'm going to do a new window because it already just reminded me it showed up in half the screen. So I'm going to do window, new window, and then command right arrow. Now I got two side by side. Over here, I'm going to switch to the pseudocode. Kind of the same process. Kind of. We're going to transfer all the inputs first. Here's all my inputs. Going to transfer them to variables first so that I can do math with them. The only exception to this is stuff that you don't do math with. What are we going to do to the name? Nothing. Nothing. So that one you don't transfer. If you don't use it, you don't transfer it. If you're not sure, transfer it. Then when you figure out you're not using it, get rid of it. If you don't use it, you don't transfer it. Well, then why am I asking for it? Because the league secretary said I want to be able to type in somebody's name and take a screen snapshot, the name is there. But we don't need it for calculations. So don't transfer it. First one I need is the bowling date. Where am I putting the bowling date? In a variable called bowling date. Escape. Click. Bowling date equals, where is it coming from? My date picker, DTP bowling date, right there. So this says take whatever's in the DTP bowling date and transfer it to this variable. Are we going to do math with that? Yes, because we need to calculate the next bowling date. So we need that one. I need the 3 scores. So I'm going to create a variable called score1, same name that I picked over here for the variable. And that's equal to whatever's in the text box. I'm watching John's head over there. Quit looking at mine. Just type like crazy. The bowler's name was not needed, so we didn't transfer it. How do I know that? Maybe you don't. Transfer them all. And when you get done with the calculations, you find out you never did anything with the bowler's name. Remove the transfer because we're not using it. Why transfer it to a variable if you're not going to use it? That takes billionths of a second. You're wasting time. Everything that I need has now been transferred. Button calculate here says first thing I'm going to do is calculate the series. Okay, series is what I'm calculating. What am I creating? That happens on the left-hand side of the equal sign. Okay, bowlers, how do I calculate the series?
Score 1 plus 2, score 2 plus score 3.
Good. score 1 plus score 2, and yes, we just use plus sign. We don't have some magic symbol for that. Score 2 plus score 3. This is where you have to know how, and if you don't know how, you go look it up, or you ask an expert. That's what I typically do. Who's the expert? For me, if I'm writing a program for myself, I usually am. If I'm writing it for somebody else, they are. How do you calculate this? If I'm not sure, I ask them. If they don't know, there's probably some engineering, mathematical genius in their company who does. So gotta find the actual formulas themselves. In this class, if you are not sure about the formula, give it a shot, send it to me, say, is this the right formula for series? And I'll tell you yes or no. And I'll also give you a hint maybe on what's wrong. Now I need the average. How do I calculate that?
Series divided by 3.
Yes, but as a learning exercise, what she said for the recording is series divided by 3. Absolutely correct. Okay, but there's a stumbling block in C# that I'm going to demonstrate for you in Unit 4, and we're going to fall on it right now. We're going to say, we're going to do this, score 1 plus score 2. Didn't I do that already? Yes, that's your first clue that her answer, that Joni's answer is better than mine. If you already did it, probably don't need to do it again. Divided by 3, that's the same thing, right? Why not?
You have to put parentheses around score 1.
Who says? It's
Uh,
pseudocode. You making up rules on me in pseudocode?
You're just dividing score 3 by 3.
Okay, that's what Joni says. That's what Steve says. Matt's going, that's what they taught me, except it's on the other side of the equal sign. Okay. It's amazing to me they teach you order of precedence is what this is called. Order of precedence. Division is done before addition. When I learned it, because that was a long time ago, back in the 1800s, right? When I learned it, we just worked this left to right. And that works good, right? But when you learned it, somewhere along the way, probably second grade now, who knows, they said, no. Division is always done first. Who came up with that rule? Programmers. That one they're teaching you, but they're not teaching you to put the results of the equation on the left-hand side. So I'm going to leave it like that for right now, because Joni's right. There, in all programming languages, in Excel, in Access, there's something called the order of precedence. Who has precedence? Who gets done first? In this case, the division gets done first. But we're going to purposely, on purpose, make the mistake so that you can see it and see that we get the wrong answer. What all programming languages will do is divide this first, then add this, then add that. Actually, first they'll divide this, then they'll add these two, and then they'll add the results of that. Does it matter when we're adding? No. But they all do that because of the order of precedence. So I'm introducing it to you now. I'm purposely making a mistake. This is design. I really ought to put parentheses in there, but I'm going to skip it for right now. All right, that one's done. Next, I need to calculate the next bowling date. Everybody see where all these names are coming from? They're all right here. All in my toe chart. All the names, those should not be changing, and they're gonna. I know, I got 76 of you. Chances of all of you not changing names on me? 0 to none. More like 50% are gonna change names somewhere along the way. Kevin's over there going, why would anybody do this? Great names. I don't know. I even warn you about it. I even threaten you. You still do it. How do we calculate the next bowling date?
Bowling day plus.
I love the whatever. Can't stop there. Okay, bowling date plus 7. Okay, that's if you bowl every week. Nowadays, bowling's so expensive. Most leagues, I'm going to say our league, is 14 days. Could we say 2 weeks? Absolutely. This is the question you got to ask. How? Over here, we still have to calculate the next bowling date. We were too high a level in design to worry about how. The how happens here in level 4. That's when it shows up. Calculate, and then display. So now I have to display the series, this thing that I calculated. Where am I going to do that? LBL series. I'm also going to display the average. If you wish, you could write yourself a little note in parentheses. Give me 1 decimal place. How did I know 1? I asked the owner of the program. You want 2, 3, 1? Bowlers don't care out to the 3rd decimal digit unless they're comparing against each other for a shot. But 1 decimal place is usually enough. Matt?
So that bowling date is kind of something that you just would, that would be like a given as well, then sort of?
This bowling date?
Like,
Or the
how would
14?
you- like, yeah, the 14.
The 14 is a given from the
Yeah.
league secretary.
Okay.
Okay? It's not an automatic. I mean, it's not, somebody else said 7, right?
Yeah.
And crazy people bowl every 3 days. You know, it's bowling crazy, I mean. But in this league, we bowl every other week. How did I know that? I asked the secretary. You got to know. It's in the program description. If it's not, then you got to go ask. In your case, for the meters to, or not meters to yards, for the gas estimate program, everything's in that paragraph, I think, that you need. And finally, I need the next bowling date. No, the label for the next bowling date. Label next bowling date is equal to the next bowling date. There's a subtle difference here, right? The prefix, LBL. It's an object on the form. This stuff here is magic. It happens behind the scenes. The user sees nothing. These are called variables. You're going to learn how to tell the operating system, hey, Windows, I need some memory. My program needs some memory. Give it to me. Windows will go out and find what it's not using and say, here, you can have this. You'll learn how to do all that. Then we're going to do this fancy math and we're going to store it behind the scenes in this memory location. The user never sees it. Then when we're done with all this math, then we throw it up on the screen so the user can see it. How long does this take? About 10 billionths of a second. User hits calc and boom, there's the answer. It's a wow, magic. Remember my chess playing computer? This stuff, piece of cake. Easy to do. Done. We only had 3 outputs, right? 1, 2, 3, display the series, display the average, display the next bowling date. When we display them, we use labels. Outputs go into labels. Same process we did in meters to yards, just a few more steps. Transfer what's on the form into variables, use those variables to calculate something new, your outputs, and then transfer the outputs into labels so the user can see them. Button clear. I'm going to my screen layout. This one I kind of have to use a combination toe chart screen layout, but I have the names of most everything. I think it makes perfect sense to go down the form. Does it matter? No. How long does it take to clear 7 things on the form? Just like that. So it doesn't matter the order, but it's sure from a design to coding, etc., it makes a lot of sense to just work from top to bottom. So the first thing I want to say, what are we going to use? Clear or equal? I'm going to use empty string. Text bowler name equals the empty string. DTP bowling date equals the empty, no. That's not going to work. Let's see if I can still show you how or why.
Oh, 'cause it's not a string.
It's a date picker, number 1. And you'll just have to trust me on this. I was going to show it to you, but then I got to download it again, and that's just going to be a pain, so I'm not going to do it. But remember that little sample program I showed you and it had that cool date picker in it? Actually, there, that's the date picker. Come back to me. Where'd you go? This is the date picker. We dropped this down. There is no way to erase this. You can't do it. So this is not acceptable. So what should I do to the bowling date? Could leave it alone. That's one option. Just leave this out altogether. In my class, reset it to some appropriate date.
Today's date.
Today's date. Today is good enough. You could say today's date if you wish. Today is good enough.
No.
If the league secretary is always half blitzed at today's date after the bowling is over, maybe we bowled yesterday and we set this to today minus 1 day or today minus 2 days or whatever the league secretary wants. Maybe we give this program to them and it keeps resetting the date to today and they go, that's dumb, it's annoying. I didn't bowl today. I bowled yesterday, or for me, I never get around to this for 2 days. Can you change it? Absolutely. And then when they hit the clear button, it sets the bowling date to 2 days in the past. That's just where it starts. They can still adjust it. But if they don't have to type it, all the better. But me, I'm a diligent league secretary. I'm probably typing this in right after, no matter how stoned I am. Did I say stoned? I didn't mean that. Take that out of the recording. Okay, what else? Got to clear my other text boxes. Text score 1 is the empty string. So date pickers, you can't clear them. Try to remember that. Text boxes, we almost always clear them. Well, maybe not. Hey, bowlers, is there a normal score that people usually roll when they bowl?
0.
That might be you, 0, but no, there's not. It's all over the map, right? You can't put one, like 111 in here or something. And then use that as a starting point, because what's going to happen? They're going to erase it every single time except for a couple of 111s here and there. So no, not really. If there's a value that you use more often than not, then maybe you put it in there to save the user from having to type it. But in this case, no. I'm anal. I'm going to put a blank line between my inputs and my outputs. LBL series equals the empty string. LBL average equals the empty string. Uh-oh. LBL next bowling date. That's a date. Equals what?
Empty string.
The empty string. It's a label. Can't fool Kevin. Good job. It's a label, it's not a date picker. Up here it's a date picker. That's a problem because you can't erase date pickers. But I can erase labels. So when I hit the clear button, it's going to leave this as today, but everything else is going to be empty. Going back to my toe chart, is that everything under button clear? Bowler name, bowling date, text score 1, 3, label series, average. Yep, got them. And they should all have the same names. You now know how to do part 2. If you're really motivated, I'm going to change what I said before. If you're really motivated and you want to send me part 1 and part 2 at the same time, there's a risk, right? Because you could, part 2 is 10 points. You could be losing points on part 2 because you screwed up in part 1. My advice, don't do that. But if you're brave, you want to send me both parts, just make sure the email tells me it's both parts. I'll go ahead and grade them both. Otherwise, wait till you get one evaluation back, part 1 evaluation, then send me part 2, which means I got to work my tail off this weekend to make sure that you get your part 1s back in time to modify your part 2s for Tuesday. And I will, that's not a problem. I should be able to get them done. I think it's going to help you, though, to do some of these for grades right away before it gets stale. We come back on Tuesday, we'll answer any questions you have that you might have about IAPs that popped up in your homework assignments. And then we're going to go on to the flow charting part of this. Remember, that should be pretty easy because all of this logic that we've already figured out, this just needs to be translated now into a flowchart. And then comes the last challenging part of this, and that's the test plan. Should be able to cover, did I say Tuesday? Should be able to cover that on Thursday.
Friday.
Okay, Friday in your case. I'm doing pretty good this semester until this week. It's been a little rougher. All right, I'm going to save all my stuff. If you manage to get behind, I will have it saved. And you can go up and get copies of my designs to help you work your design for the gas estimate program. That's all for today.